All right, let's talk about a single year in music history that honestly felt like a total collision of the past and the future. We're digging into 2002.
So, what did 2002 even sound like? Was it all loud and angry, or was it quiet and comforting? Was it something totally manufactured for TV, or was it born in a gritty garage somewhere? Well, the crazy thing is, the answer is, yeah, all of it, all at the exact same time.
You had this. This was the sound of just absolute global domination. And then you had this. The sound of a whole nation just looking for some comfort.
And of course, this. This was the sound of fame itself being turned into a factory product.
And underneath it all was this. The sound of an entire industry starting to completely crack apart. Okay, let's really get into this.
So, you gotta understand, 2002 wasn't just another year on the calendar. Not at all. It was a real watershed moment. It was this period of just extreme tension, where the old world, the world of selling millions and millions of physical CDs, was basically in a death match with this brand new world of digital file sharing.
And on top of all that, culturally, the country was still just reeling from the shock of 9/11. And this created this deep split in what we all wanted from our music. On one hand, you had this hunger for loud, defiant, let's forget the world kind of escapism, and on the other, there was this desperate need for something quiet, something comforting. So you put all that together, it created the perfect storm for a truly strange and transformative year in music.
So, right in the middle of all this chaos, one sound just became the absolute center of gravity. I mean, in 2002, hip-hop and R&B, they weren't just topping the charts, they literally were the charts. This was the year, the exact moment that the genre finished its long journey from the streets to the suburbs. It became the undisputed sound of pop culture, period.
And the undisputed king of that world? Eminem, no question. The Eminem Show wasn't just an album. It was a cultural event, a commercial juggernaut. It was kind of the last great proof that the old CD monoculture could still create a planet-sized superstar. He was so dominant that year that he even won an Oscar for Lose Yourself, the very first hip-hop track ever to do that. Just incredible.
But what's really fascinating here is the sheer variety of that dominance. It wasn't just one thing. You had Nelly's pop rap anthem, Hot in Her, which has completely owned the entire summer. Then you had the super slick, radio-perfect R&B rap formula from Murder Inc. artists like Ashanti. And this is so important, it marked the huge commercial rise of the South. You had the charismatic swagger of Ludacris, and of course the raw, just window-rattling energy of Lil Jon's crunk music exploding onto the scene.
Okay, so if hip-hop was this unified empire just conquering the mainstream, the rock world was, it was a kingdom in the middle of a civil war. It was having a complete, full-blown identity crisis, splitting into these fiercely opposing camps that had totally different ideas of what a rock star should even look and sound like.
Right, so on one side, you had post-grunge. This was the sound that basically took all the angst from 90s grunge and polished it up into these huge radio-friendly hits. I'm talking about bands like Nickelback, who just absolutely dominated the airwaves. But then on the complete other side, you had the garage rock revival. This was a stripped-down, raw, authentic reaction against all that polish. So you got the Strokes, the White Stripes. They didn't sell nearly as many records, but man, they were the definition of cool. They topped all the critics' year-end lists.
And you know what's funny? While the critics and the radio stations were busy fighting that war, pop punk and emo just quietly took over an entire generation. Seriously, for millions of teenagers, bands like Jimmy Eat World and Dashboard Confessional weren't just making songs. They were building a massive, passionate subculture right there in suburban bedrooms and at the Vans Warped Tour.
Meanwhile, over in the world of pop, that glossy teen pop bubble from the late 90s, it had finally burst. The whole Britney and NSYNC era was fading out, and the industry was scrambling to figure out, okay, what's next? What's the next big thing? And they ended up finding two totally different kinds of stars in two very, very different places.
First place they looked? The TV studio. American Idol debuted and just completely rewrote the rules. I mean, this thing wasn't just a talent show. It was an industrial strength factory for making stars. It took the power right out of the record label executives' hands and gave it to the audience at home. And it proved you could literally manufacture a superstar complete with a record-breaking #1 hit in just a matter of months.
And the second place? The skate park. This is where Avril Lavigne comes in, marketed so perfectly as the anti-Britney. In a world that was all about choreographed dance routines, she shows up with a skateboard and a necktie.
Her whole pop rock rebellion thing, it felt real to millions of kids, and her album Let Go became this global phenomenon. So here's the key takeaway. Pop stardom was no longer a one-size-fits-all deal. You could be crowned by America on live TV, or you could be the rebel who rejected everything pop was supposed to be.
Now, remember that post-9/11 tension we were talking about earlier? Well, nowhere was that felt more sharply than in country music. You had Toby Keith, who just captured the raw, unfiltered anger of a big part of America with this really aggressive anthem. It was direct, it was unapologetic, and for a lot of people, it felt like exactly the right response at the time.
But at the very same time, Alan Jackson captured a completely different mood, one of quiet reflection, of confusion, of mourning. And this just perfectly illustrates the nation's divided soul. These weren't just two hit songs, There were two fundamentally different answers to the exact same national trauma. And you would hear them playing back-to-back on the very same radio stations. It was wild.
So get this. While all these artists are out there creating this vibrant, complicated, contradictory music, the industry that was supposed to be selling it was in a complete and total panic. And they started making decisions that would, frankly, haunt them for the next decade. Let's dig into that.
And nothing illustrates the industry's confusion better than the story of the band Wilco. Just follow this, it's nuts. One part of a massive corporation, a label called Reprise, literally paid Wilco to just go away. They thought their new album was commercially worthless and dropped them. Then, and this is the best part, another label, Nonesuch, which was owned by the very same parent company, paid to release that exact same album, and it went on to become this universally acclaimed classic. It just shows you, they didn't understand the art anymore, and they really didn't understand their own business.
And it's no wonder they were confused. Just look at this. Sales were falling off a cliff. Their entire business model, which was built on selling you an $18 plastic disc, was just crumbling before their eyes. But what was their response? Was it innovation? Nope. It was litigation. The RIAA, the industry's big representative group, started suing its own customers. We're talking college students, parents, pretty much anyone with a file-sharing app. It was a total PR disaster that just made them look like these clueless bullies fighting a war they had already lost.
But here's the thing. Even as the old industry was fighting these losing battles, the future was already starting to grow in the cracks they left behind. A whole new business model was being built, not in boardrooms, but in the muddy fields of the very first Bonnaroo Music Festival. It was being built in the success of the first Austin City Limits Fest and Coachella's expansion. And you saw it in the quiet, runaway success of an artist like Norah Jones, who sold 27 million albums by just quietly ignoring every single trend out there.
So, what's the big takeaway here? Why does any of this matter today? Well, it's because all those tensions from 2002, they never actually went away. The fight between physical and digital, the splintering of genres into a million different subcultures, the idea that fame could come from anywhere, all of that just became the permanent, chaotic, normal state of music as we know it now. So was 2002 the end of the old world, or was it just the messy blueprint for the new one? The truth is, it was both. That one wild, chaotic year of conflict and contradiction is what gave us the fragmented, exciting, and totally unpredictable music landscape we live in today. It really was the end of one big story and the very beginning of all the others.